Great. Well, I think our recording has started. This is Stacy Miller. I'm the director of the Farmers Market Coalition. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. This is a webinar that we're hosting for our members to give an update about the Farm Bill process and offer a little primer on the Farm Bill as it relates to farmers markets. As many of us have familiar, we often feel like the Farm Bill is this very intimidating, large piece of legislation. We hear it talked about sometimes in a negative context about commodities and whatnot, and how the challenge being that how can we leverage the Farm Bill to create a more level playing field for direct marketing farmers, those selling fresh fruits and vegetables in particular, those who are engaged in what we might call civic agriculture, of which farmers markets is a very big component. So I'm going to I'm going to give a brief introduction and then moderate some questions. I do want to offer a little bit of housekeeping before I introduce our presenters, and that is that we will be doing a Q&A period after Kate Fitzgerald's portion of the presentation. And what would be helpful is if you type in your questions as you have them into the chat or Q&A window, and then we will collect all those and be able to bring them to Kate's attention once she's done presenting. And then we're going to move on to Natalie Roper, who's going to talk a little bit about some action steps that we can take. So that's how the Q&A portion is going to work. And now I'll introduce Kate Fitzgerald as a policy advisor. Kate has a long history with farmers markets. Many of you probably read her intro when you registered because it was right there. I won't read it verbatim. But she worked with farmers markets in Texas, both in kind of a grassroots capacity as well as with government agencies. She's been in D.C. for the last few years. She formerly worked for the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, and over the last few years has taken a leading role in helping build bridges and leverage connections and opportunities between health and agriculture. And we're really delighted that she's going to be here to offer us her in-depth insider perspective on what's happening on Capitol Hill right now. Natalie Roper is the Farmers Market Coalition intern. She's in the Frank Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy here in Charlottesville, Virginia at the University of Virginia. So we're delighted to have them both. And I'm going to offer, before I turn everything over to Kate, I'm going to talk a little bit about the FMC priorities that we have. Obviously, the Farmers Market Promotion Program is really the flagship program for farmers markets. It was created in 2002. As many of you have experienced, maybe some of you up until late at night last night, those grants are competitive, very competitive, to establish, expand, and promote local farmers markets and other form of direct-to-consumer markets. The Specialty Crop Block Grant Program provides resources to state departments of agriculture to enhance competitiveness of farmers that grow fresh fruits, vegetables, tree fruits, nursery crops. Many states have used Specialty Crop Block Grant funds to establish and develop farmers markets. SNAP, of course, is a program of concern, but we know that 46 million Americans currently rely on the SNAP program, formerly known as food stamps, to meet their food needs. Only about a quarter of farmers markets are authorized to serve SNAP families, and we know that a very, very small percentage of the $71 billion spent in SNAP in 2011 got redeemed by direct marketing farmers, although that percentage is continuing to grow, and it's our vision that continue to grow at an accelerated pace as more markets get access to SNAP. So there are a number of things that are happening with regard to SNAP to help make that happen, which we'll talk about. Kate will talk about a little more in depth. Of course, the Farmers Market Nutrition Programs, established in 1992, those were established to provide locally grown fresh fruits and vegetables to participants in the WIC, as well as low-income seniors. And the low-income seniors, that part was added, I believe, in 2001. And the states administer those programs. Some of you may have seen cuts, in particular, to the WIC FMNP program, as it continues to be pressured with funding cuts at the federal level. So those are the main programs I want to talk about. Of course, the beginning farmer and rancher grants, value-added producer grants, the community food projects, a lot of other grant programs certainly support work integral or peripheral to farmers markets, and we support those as well. But these are our main focuses for the purposes of this webinar today. To refer specifically to FMPP, we know, as I mentioned, that the competitiveness for this program is very high. This just shows that the number of awards in proportion to the number of applications submitted, I believe is around 17% or so. The exciting thing about this, of course, is that you know, it expanded to $10 million last year, $10 million again this year, and there's the possibility of it getting more funding to be able to accommodate other local food projects beginning in 2013. And Kate will talk about that a little bit as well. Now, I do want to mention, before we get too far here, this is a slightly off the track, but it's very timely, and many of you saw that there's an announcement that the USDA Food and Nutrition Service recently announced $4 million to expand the availability of wireless point-of-sale equipment to farmers markets, those that are currently not participating in SNAP. So there was a memo that went out a couple weeks ago. Your state SNAP agency does have resources now to provide technology and cover the wireless monthly cost. However, the state agency does have to obligate those funds before September 30th. And markets, in order to be eligible for that program, need to be SNAP authorized before they receive that equipment. There's going to be a Federal Register notice that comes out very soon, any day now, we're told from USDA, and they're going to solicit input on how that can be improved. Are there other aspects of SNAP integration into farmers markets that can be supported by this funding opportunity next year? This year, they're mainly concerned with getting the money out, getting the technology out as efficiently as possible before the end of the fiscal year, and then they're going to consider other improvements to how that gets done in the process. So this is going to be a great opportunity for all of us to provide some valuable input on how that $4 million could most effectively leverage community-level change in getting SNAP participants connected with farmers markets and farmers connected with a more diverse customer base. So this just shows one piece of the memorandum that went out, and I think Liz, thank you, Liz, just included a link to the post on our website that includes a link both to this chart as well as the memorandum and an FAQ that FNS issued trying to respond to some frequently asked questions about this program and what is an eligible expenditure for the state agency and what's not. So for now, this is the amount that your state is receiving for these funds. And if you, of course, notice any errors in some of the calculations or the estimates that they have, that too is something that can be noted when we respond to the Federal Register notice. So keeping tabs on some, making sure that those calculations are based on accurate numbers of markets participating is going to be important as well. So without further ado, we're going to get back to specific Farm Bill current events, and I'll turn it over to Kate Fitzgerald. Thanks for joining us, Kate, and I'll turn it over to you.
So if you are not in DC and out there in the real world where life is much better and you're not thinking about the Farm Bill 24/7, I think that's totally wonderful and a sign of a healthy life. But important things are happening and will be happening in the next 3 months, and this would be a good time to check in and pay attention, because it looks possible that the House and Senate will come together on some kind of farm bill. The current authorization for programs expires at the end of September. What that means is that Congress needs to either reauthorize the existing programs or pass a new bill before then. Both the Senate and the House Agriculture Committees would prefer to pass a new bill by September 30th, but given the craziness of the politics in this election year, that may not be possible. The reason that that's of concern to farmers market advocates is that there are a number of programs that will expire on September 30th if they're not reauthorized. Among them is the Farmers Market Promotion Program. So advocates should be pushing hard to get a bill reauthorized that includes funding for those programs. The Senate has begun the process, and as Stacy mentioned, on April 26th, the Agriculture Committee in the Senate passed the Agriculture Reform, Food, and Jobs Act. It looks now as though that bill is going to be considered on the Senate floor the week of June 4th, which is just about 10 days from now, a little bit more. It may begin consideration on Tuesday the 5th, which I guess is exactly 2 weeks. The House Ag Committee will consider its bill starting in the middle of June, and the goal is for them to pass it out of committee by the end of June, so that they'll leave for their July 4th recess with it passed, and then it's a question of Speaker Boehner giving it time for consideration on the floor of the House. Ideally, the way it works is bills are passed through each chamber, and then a conference committee gets together, sorts out the differences, comes up with some kind of consolidated bill that meets the needs of both houses. The consensus bill then gets sent back and is approved by the House and the Senate. As you can imagine, that will take a lot of really hard work in August and September if indeed the House does pass its bill by the end of June. Ideally, though, that's the way the process would go.
Kate, I don't want to interrupt you, but I believe we're still all looking at the cover slide. I'm not sure if that's what you intended.
No, now you should see a slide that says Senate and House Summary. Do you see that?
No, but I'm forwarding it now. Yeah, okay. I'm going to forward the slides for you. Do you want to tell me when to move forward?
Sure. Okay.
Thanks.
So the summary in the Senate now, the bill that was passed out of the Ag Committee has net cuts of about $23 billion. We anticipate that the bill that will be passed out of or that will be presented to the House Agriculture Committee will have about $10 billion more in cuts. And I may have on this slide underestimated how large a cut they're going to make to nutrition. They've been talking on the House side about balancing cuts, and so I took that to mean that they would be balanced between the various large titles, which are commodity, conservation, and nutrition. They may mean that commodity and conservation together will balance in their cuts with a much deeper cut to nutrition. Now it's sounding more like $15 billion potentially coming from nutrition. You can go ahead and advance. So basically what we're going to get is a difference of about $10 billion between the House and the Senate bills. and some pretty significant differences in the way the money is spent in the bills too. Could you please advance? Okay, well, I'll begin talking. The Senate bill, which is called the Agriculture Reform, Food and Jobs Act, has several really excellent provisions for farmers markets. When you see the slide, and perhaps since the presentation isn't working, the Farmers Market Coalition can send them to you. But I highlight 5 different provisions, all of them in the nutrition title in the Senate bill, that explicitly help farmers markets. The first is the Hungry, Free, and Healthy Communities Grant Program, which is a new program with $100 million in potential spending over the next 5 years for programs around the country that provide local fruit and vegetable incentives to SNAP families. The next is the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, which we've already discussed briefly. That's an incentive program for low-income seniors, and it continues to receive about $20 million a year in mandatory funding. A cost-free provision in the bill gives USDA explicit authority to start working on cost-effective and user-friendly mobile technology for farmers markets, mobile markets, CSAs, various kinds of non-traditional retailers to allow them to serve SNAP families. So that's an excellent provision for better technology going forward. There's also a nice new rule that allows SNAP families to use their benefits to buy CSA shares. And finally, it includes a provision that authorizes USDA to do grants and guarantee loans for better food stores in low-income areas as well as farmers markets. That's the Healthy Food Financing Initiative. All right, I'm going to try to just advance the slides and see if it works from here.
And we are looking at the slides right now, and I think maybe you're forwarding on your own PowerPoint, and you could be forwarding on my screen. And I'm not exactly sure what it looks like on your computer, but right now I just advanced it to the SNAP sales in Midwestern farmers markets.
And that's all that I have open on my computer, so that's great.
Okay. All right.
So the SNAP sales, the reason I put this up is because this is a graphic that captures the attention of lots of people in the health and anti-hunger communities and also in the rural economic development fields. And as farmers markets grow, the kinds of allies that we need to have go beyond just farmers market stakeholders. So in developing relationships and good advocacy partners in the public health field, graphics like this that show how SNAP incentives, even for a limited time, can act as a catalyst to introduce SNAP families to farmers markets is very telling for folks whose bottom line concern is getting people easy access and improved consumption of fruits and vegetables. It's also very important for rural development communities because it shows in this nice graphic, sort of knock you between your eyes way, that farmers markets can be a way to get significant amounts of funding flowing into farmers and rural communities. This is Michigan, which in 2011 did more than $1 million in SNAP sales at farmers markets, and that's up more than 3,000% over 2007 when there was just $16,000 worth of SNAP sales in farmers markets. Okay, let's advance. We've talked about the provisions that impact farmers markets in the nutrition title. The other title that is important specifically to farmers market programs is Title 10, Specialty Crops and Horticulture. This is where the Farmers Market Promotion Program is housed and the specialty crop block grants. This Senate bill not only expands the funding for the Farmers Market Promotion Program from $10 to $20 million a year, but also expands its range of grant making. It can now support programs for food hubs and other business enterprises that help build a supply chain between direct sale markets and larger institutional wholesale buyers. Specialty crop block grant funding program stays the same, but the amount to be distributed to states goes from $55 to $70 million a year. So that's a summary of the programs that have a direct impact on farmers' markets. And as you can see, the net message is significantly more money flows to farmers' markets in the Senate version of the Farm Bill. So it's a good one to support for local marketing efforts. On the next slide, I talk a little bit about some of the crop insurance provisions in the bill. There's been a lot of talk in the press about crop insurance, and rightfully so, because the Senate bill really fundamentally changes the direction of farm policy away from the commodity title towards supporting a larger crop insurance system. And what that means is direct payments are gone, most of the counter-cyclical payments are gone. Instead, farmers are expected to buy into insurance programs that cover catastrophic kinds of losses on their farms, things like floods or hailstorms, things beyond their control. The way crop insurance works is it's offered by private agents, but USDA provides or pays for about 60% of the premium that the farmer pays for the insurance policy. So the farmer cost of buying the insurance is subsidized by the government. One of the big failings of crop insurance has been that there have not been good insurance policies out there for small, organic, or highly diversified farms to buy. Simply put, the crop insurance agency didn't think there was enough money to be made selling policies to that market sector, so they didn't develop them. And interestingly enough, USDA was prohibited from developing policies. That prohibition was eliminated, and USDA has been instructed to go work on good policies for diversified farmers. One of the good things, one of the very few good things about the commodity title was that farmers had to show that they were complying with conservation measures in order to get their direct payments. Crop insurance does not have a conservation compliance criteria, which is a potential serious problem. The Senate bill does include one provision that eliminates the federal premium if farmers are going to be busting out and putting into production new and fragile prairie land. So that's just a quick summary of what's in the crop insurance title, since there's been so much ag press about it. The next slide talks about the commodity title, and what we have here is some really big wins for progressive agriculture. Direct and counter-cyclical payments are gone, and the Senate bill includes really good reforms that should, I guess we can never be sure that it will eliminate, but at least really restrict and control absentee landowners that are not involved in farm management to get payments on the land. So that's a definite improvement. So on balance, the bill is certainly not perfect. The $4 billion cut to SNAP is going to be very, very painful for many low-income families. The reform provisions to the commodity title are certainly good and long overdue. It's not perfect, but interestingly, one of the sectors that really comes out having done best in terms of new funding for its goals are small family farmers that do direct or regional marketing, and also some organic crops. The next slide talks about the prospects for a bill in 2012. This Congress does not have a good track record for getting legislation done in anything like a timely way. It doesn't have a reputation for being bipartisan or compromising well. In addition, there are several things that make a farm bill a real challenge to do. First is, as I mentioned at the beginning, the September 30th deadline. There's just not a lot of time to negotiate all of the really complex programs that have to be worked out in order to get a bill that can pass both chambers. Second of all, because this is a national election year, historically Congress, after the end of July, spends as little time as possible in Washington, D.C., because they all want to be out electioneering in their districts. That means there simply are not as many work days here to get the job done. The final factor is that while the Senate bill was bipartisan, and farm bills have traditionally been bipartisan because farm policy often is dictated more by where one lives than by one's political party, the virulence of politics this year may really be working against the possibility of some kind of bipartisan consensus. So those are three serious challenges. Given that, and with the notion that hope springs eternal, the last slide shows an address and a website where you can be connected directly to either the office of your senator or your representative. And I strongly suggest you go ahead and contact them. Honestly, what they hear from their constituents is significantly more important than what advocacy organizations say to them in meetings on the Hill. Your voice really will be heard, so I suggest you take the 5 minutes it will take to go ahead, contact your member of Congress, and let them know what you do want in a farm bill and what you don't. And that's it. I'll be glad to take questions for a few minutes.
Thank you, Kate. That was very informative. We did have one question to which I responded by typing, but I'll read it out loud just in case. And that is, if my market already accepts SNAP, would I be eligible for the funding to cover machine costs, et cetera? And the answer is no, not at this time, unfortunately. The 2012 money is specifically for markets that are not currently authorized and accepting SNAP benefits. But FNS will be interested in hearing recommendations from like you about how they could potentially support SNAP in general at farmers markets and not really penalize, in effect, penalize early adopters. So that will be a great opportunity for the RFP to comment on that. So thank you, Allison, for that question. The other question that we have so far is from David Nicholson, and he was hoping, Kate, that you could just briefly expand on what was unique about the Michigan leadership in accounting for that astounding SNAP sales in terms of what any federal or private investment that you wanted to kind of elaborate on.
Right. What was unique about Michigan was that an organization there called Fair Food Network got a significant multi-year grant to do incentive programs just in Michigan. So they started in 2010 with 5 different market sites in Detroit. I guess that was 2009. In 2010, it expanded to 15. It was up to 54 last summer, and this year will be in 70 markets. So I think there are now incentive programs funded by the Fair Food Network in about between 1/3 and 1/2 of Michigan farmers markets, and all of them are run in exactly the same way. They all use the same kinds of public information and messaging, and I think that that's been really helpful in just increasing knowledge among SNAP families, even if they're not in a community that has a farmer's market that has the incentive program going. They've managed to reach a kind of critical scale that's really impacted general public knowledge about it.
Great. I tried to concisely explain that in there. Now, another question from Nadia. WIC FMMP has faced a lot of cuts lately, while the Senate version of the Farm Bill includes stable funding for senior FMMP. Would you advise advocating for WIC FMMP to be moved from CNR to the Farm Bill?
You know, that is a really, really hard problem that honestly should have been addressed many years ago. We've tried, and although it seems silly, there are really significant jurisdictional issues on the House side. WIC is controlled by a different House committee than the Farm Bill, and switching it from one piece of legislation in one committee to another piece of legislation in another committee actually involves cost, and at the moment when the Agriculture Committee is trying to cut its spending, the last thing in the world they want to do is take on another program and give it mandatory funding. You know, the problem, WIC would not have a problem if it stayed in the House Health Committee. The basic problem is that it does not have mandatory funding. There's a difference between authorized funding, which essentially gives USDA permission to run a program but does not give them the money to do it, and mandatory funding, which gives USDA not only permission but also the mandate and the wherewithal to run it. So I think the best bet, honestly, for the WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program is not to try to both change its committee of jurisdiction and change it from an authorized program to a mandatory program, but to instead let it stay in the committee in which it is, but move it to mandatory funding. But you're absolutely right. It has to fight every single year for funds.
Great, thank you. That was great. I tried to capture that in the text answer to that, so it'll be on record there. Emily, whom I assume from Michigan, said, don't forget about the work of the Michigan Farmers Market Association, FMC member and a food assistance partnership. So yes, definitely, I know Ms. has been very involved in the success there in Michigan. So.
Right, and you know, they absolutely are. I don't want to somehow give a backhand disrespect to any of the other state farmers market associations, which is important. I mean, and the bad bit about showing that slide is it is not meant at all to cast aspersions on other states where farmers market associations and small foundations are really doing admirable work with incentive programs. I think what really distinguishes Michigan is the amount of money they had available to do it, which allowed them to really blanket a large geographic area, and that created buzz. But farmers markets associations in Michigan and elsewhere are really great and doing hugely important work in that sector.
Yes, definitely agreed. And I think that the role of state organizations like that will continue to play a larger role, hopefully, as this as we make some recommendations and this $4 million appropriation evolves over time. So we hope that there'll be a credible role for them moving forward. Okay, we have another question, one from Tim. I'm not sure, I'm quite sure what this refers to. Will states be able to acquire funds up front before deadlines in order to implement to their markets in such a short time period to organize new markets?
I think the answer to that is no, because the market will already have to have been certified before it can apply for the funding.
And when you say certified, you mean authorized as a SNAP retailer, right?
Right, right.
Yes. Okay. Kim, if that doesn't respond to your question, then please try to help us clarify. But I'll. Let's see, Julie asked about looking at the PowerPoint on our own time. We'll definitely post the all of these PowerPoints on our website on the Information Marketplace page. So Julie and everyone else will be able to see that there if you missed the beginning. Gail Eggman wants to hear just a little bit more about the mobile technology provision.
You know, it's interesting. Basically, what it does is give USDA a formal authority to do what they're already doing, which is conduct pilot programs testing different kinds of technology in different places. And the two that are going now that immediately come to mind is one again in Michigan, in which the SNAP agency, the WIC agency, and the Farmers Market Association and the Department of Ag are all working together to find a way to let SNAP, food stamp, and SNAP incentive or double up food buck customers all shop at the farmers market, and the farmers will only need one instrument or one machine, an iPad or an iPhone, to accept those three different benefits. There's another pilot project in Western Massachusetts that's doing a similar thing. So what the Senate does is USDA actually recognizes that the mag stripe technology is old, it's cumbersome, it's probably no longer cost effective, and it doesn't easily permit for the use of WIC benefits, and a WIC is going to have to be all electronic by the year 2020. So to their credit, Food and Nutrition Service is trying to figure out how to do this better, has begun to support pilot projects, and what the Senate language does is officially gives them statutory authority to do that, and essentially the stamp of approval that yes, that's what Congress wants. Congress wants the SNAP program to be as flexible as possible so that people can access healthy, affordable food from farmers as easily as possible. There's no money attached to it at all. It's not a new demonstration project. It's just authority.
Okay, Kate, I know that you have to get on the line. There are a few other questions, and I'm not sure how you want to handle that. But
can I take one more specific to the Farm Bill, and then any others I'll respond to in writing?
Sure. Maybe you can. So will the feds change regs to allow no printed receipts for WIC SNAP, which is the problem in moving wireless technology forward? Not specifically Farm Bill, but.
You know, they know that that's a problem, and they don't know what to do about that. I don't know if they will change. I don't know whether that's a statutory requirement or an internal policy that could just be done with the rule change. There's nothing in the Farm Bill that addresses that. but you're right that it's something that they realize is a problem.
Great. Yeah, fortunately, FNS is, because we've been in frequent conversations with them, they do recognize that there are quite a few problems. They just haven't necessarily figured out a way to respond to them yet, so, but they are aware. And we hope that you guys will keep us continually aware of issues that you see in your communities. Okay, some of the other questions are ones that we can probably respond to. That way we can let you go. And if there are any others, we've got people's contact information. We can forward the question and make sure that that person gets copied and you can respond to it.
Perfect. I will do it.
Thank you so much, Kate. And now we're going to let Natalie talk a little bit about the Farmers Market Advocate Toolkit and talk about
you.
And for those of you who still have unanswered questions, I'm going to try to address those in the answer window while Natalie is presenting. And if we don't finish them all, we'll bring them up back again at the end. So thanks for your patience.
Great. Well, I think Kate transitioned perfectly with her last slide by saying that it was so important that your legislators hear from you about what you do and do not want in the Farm Bill. And as you can see, the Farm Bill is well underway, and I think it's more important than ever to have the tools and confidence to make your voices heard. And as Kate has shown, this Farm Bill affects so many aspects of our lives, and it's important that we weigh in on these issues. The Farmers Market Coalition has created this Farmers Market Advocates Toolkit in April in hopes of providing guidance to you and communicating to legislators the importance of farmers markets. This toolkit is made up of a series of one-pagers, the first being about lobbying, the second about bonding with your legislator, and the third, basically a cheat sheet of what Kate was just saying about the processes of the Farm Bill and provisions about farmers markets. And hopefully this series of one-pagers will help you navigate this seemingly daunting world of policy and make it a little easier for you to communicate your local food system expertise to those who really need to hear it most in a timely manner. And this first one, let's see, I'm going to move my, here we go. Lobbying is one really important way to communicate to your legislators. However, the term does not always have a very good reputation. There's a lot of confusion about what is considered to be lobbying, who can lobby, and what alternatives to lobbying are. And this first one-pager attempts to clarify the confusion about what counts as direct or grassroots lobbying. And I'm going to try and show you. Here we go. And this is what that one-pager looks like. And as you can see, it sort of helps make that distinction between the difference of education and lobbying. And while federal tax laws limit how much lobbying nonprofit organizations can engage in, often nonprofits are really engaging in education activities. And this one-pager helps clarify the difference in those activities. And by distinguishing the difference between direct lobbying and grassroots lobbying, helping you make that distinction between lobbying and education. And this second one-pager breaks down this process of keeping your Senate and House members up to date on things going on in your community down to 5 steps. And I will try and find that one for you here. Okay. And this, just like Kate was saying, it's really important to have this direct communication with your legislators so they can start to understand what's going on from you guys, the experts on the ground, doing these things in your community every day. And this first step, doing your homework by knowing first who your representatives are, I'm going to help you out with in just a second by showing you a slide of which representatives are on agriculture committees. So I'll show you that in a second. But I also want to draw your attention to step 4 one-pager, which is hosting a site visit, and inviting your legislators to events going on in your community is a great way for your representatives to understand hands-on what's going on in their community. And they love opportunities to understand the great things that are going on. They also love the opportunity of positive media, so having local newspapers and television stations present too is a great way for a win-win situation where they're getting positive media and you're showing them all the wonderful things that's going on. And on the second page of this one, there is a calendar that shows the 2012 House and Senate session, and all of the dates that aren't highlighted or underlined are dates that House and Senate are not in session and would be great opportunities to schedule an event with the legislators, schedule a meeting, attend town meetings, because they're more likely to be in their district offices. And certainly National Farmers Market Week coming up in August 5th to 11th, is a fabulous opportunity to invite legislators to events that your market might have going on, to show them firsthand the successes of your farmers market and the importance that it has in your community. So I'm doing a lot of switching around over here. And so again, helping you with that first step of doing your homework. For those of you who don't know, here are the members that are on the agriculture committees. This first slide shows the House Agriculture Committee members. And these are very influential people in the direction of the Farm Bill. And if you are represented by any of these legislators, these are really important people to have relationships with. And I hope that this one-pager will help you break down that process into some steps that are easy and hopefully can help you start building that relationship with these people. Oops, and here are the Senate Agriculture Committee members. And after this webinar, you will be directed to a page where you can input your zip code, and it will generate your representatives for you. And it will then show you a letter that you can either edit slightly or keep as is, easily send off to your respective representatives, write them. And so again, we really encourage you to take advantage of that quick and easy opportunity to begin building that relationship. And this last one-pager of this toolkit, like I said earlier, is a little bit of a cheat sheet of what Kate's presentation was telling us. How does this farm bill get passed, and what's the process that's needed to turn a bill into a law, as well as outlining specific farmers market provisions that are included that your legislator really needs to know that you support. And that's what this, hopefully you guys can see that, the Farm Bill one-pager looks like. And through lobbying and education and building a relationship with your legislator, as the previous two one-pagers showed, you can really be a part of this Farm Bill process and make sure that Agriculture Committee members and representatives know what your priorities are as a Farmers Market Coalition member and a Farmers Market supporter. And the last part of this toolkit is an op-ed template. Op-eds are another really important way to continue building relationships with your legislators. Representatives have staff members that read through local newspapers, and these op-eds actually get read by your legislators. However, they also have the larger purpose of educating your local communities about the success of your farmers markets. Just like communicating directly with legislators and lobbying, getting published in print or online and making sure that these publications get circulated is another really important way to educate legislators and fellow voters about the importance of farmers markets in your region. This last piece of the toolkit was designed in particular to spotlight the farmers market promotion program success stories. However, this op-ed template can easily be tailored to continue to spread positive information about the successes and impacts of farmers markets. This op-ed template hopefully will provide a structure and information useful to reaching out to your communities to share any successes of your market. And this is what that template looks like. And as the Farmers Market Promotion Program is very diverse and varying, This template provides a few different options for differing introduction and results and conclusions paragraphs to make sure they personalize to your market's project. So as you can see, there's different steps. This first step outlines different options for an introduction to a problem the farmers markets provide a great solution for. And then the second step is inserting a brief introduction to the specific problem that your project addresses. The two examples we have here are about SNAP implementation or using funding to strengthen market governance structure and business planning. And then the next important thing to include in your op-ed template is what did you do? What was your project about? And then I think most importantly, what were the outcomes? And that's where it's really important to include hard numbers to make sure that you make the concrete case that your project was successful. Numbers such as increased vendors or increased EBP customers or percentage increase in SNAP redemptions depending on your project. Those things really help drive the point home and prove to your readers that your project was really successful. But as I mentioned earlier, it isn't going to do very much good unless we can get them published. And something really important to take into consideration is the certain policies that your local papers have according to word limits. And so it's important to research these policies on your own and make sure that your op-ed adheres to these word limits. Most policies say that it should be between 600 to 750 words. It's also important to identify who you are to make sure that your readers understand the perspective that they are reading from. So that means just including your name under the headline of your submission, but also including a short description of yourself at the end of your article, including your name, a job description, basic accomplishments, etc. Again, to make sure your readers know what kind of person they're hearing from. In terms of submitting these op-eds, a lot of them are sent via email, but it's important to not only send it as an attachment, but also in the body, because a lot of local media outlets won't open attachments at all because of fear of viruses and things like that over email. And following up is a great idea, but we have to make sure that the calls are made short, as these people are very busy, and calling after 3 p.m. is a little dangerous because editors are usually on deadline by then and probably won't be answering phone. And I have been working with a few markets to help get an op-ed written, and I really just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that this was up for grabs, and anyone that's interested, please email me. I know that this is a tight time. It's peak market season, and I am confident that the timeliness is so important, and with the Farm Bill well underway, senators and House members and community members really need to hear about the successes of the Farmers Market Promotion Program, but also farmers markets in general. And so I've scheduled a few calls with a few markets, and within 2 weeks of calls or sending drafts back and forth, we were able to have a finalized op-ed that could be sent out to local media outlets ready to be published. So please, here's my email on this slide. Email me if you have any interest in doing that. I'd be happy to help in any way to get these out and get your voices heard. And these are some great links about the Farm Bill in general. And this first link is to the Farmers Market Toolkit that I've been talking about. And I hope that you all check it out and feel free to print out any of these one-pagers, share with your individual members, with market customers, etc., to help get the word out and help others learn the importance of sharing their experiences and make sure that legislators understand what your priorities are. So, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Natalie. That was great. If there are any other questions, I think I responded in the Q&A text to the questions that I could answer. If there are any others, feel free to type them in real quick there, and we'll address them. And I did want to mention there was a link that we sent out in the chat window that actually goes to this action page where we've tried to, if you're not quite ready, you want to write an op-ed yet, or you're still thinking about it, there's one easy way that you can have your voice heard that literally will take you probably 10 seconds. And about an hour, you'll get a follow-up email. All the participants from this webinar will get a follow-up email with a link to this page, which goes to a page on the FMC website once you type in your zip code, which I've already done, and it populated this. So these are my senators, Senator Jim Webb and Mark Warner. Now, they are not represented on ag committees, but because they are ultimately going to be voting on what the ag committee is proposing in the Farm Bill, it's important that they also hear from you. So regardless of whether you're represented by someone in a Senate or House Agriculture Committee, you can still get your voice heard. So there's some template letters here which you're free to modify, and then with simply by filling in your email and organization information, it'll send a letter right to those with one click. So that's a great, easy first step. We tried to make it as easy as possible for you, and you can insert any kind of specific community success stories you want to in these letters. But that's one way to make sure that if and when this Farm Bill comes to the Senate floor and then the House floors respectively, that your elected leaders know how you feel, and they're more likely to be concerned with with the needs in your community as opposed to kind of any blanket instinct to cut. So if they know that a certain program is important to you, it's less likely to be considered a potential area for savings. In particular in the House, which is very, very focused on cutting a lot of costs. And given that we know what a small portion of the USDA's budget any kind of farmers marketing or direct marketing funding goes to, we know that there are other places that can cut that don't affect communities the way that these programs do. So if it doesn't look like there are any other questions, and I know we're a few minutes after our 2 o'clock end time, but this webinar will be available. This page here that I'm showing you will be available. We're going to send this out to other FMC members later in the week, so we hopefully will get a good response. But you guys are seeing it first. So thank you to everyone participating, and we wish you hopefully a good night's sleep for any of you who stayed up late working on your FMPP proposals, and a great rest of the spring. And stay tuned for other webinar announcements that we'll be doing some others this summer, probably focusing on market promotion and some of those activities which might help you in the middle of the summer. So thank you, and have a great afternoon.